have the right to do this. I'm not going to scream at you and pick it. You guys have the right to do it. Just like someone can sit here and they have the right to set up a stand that proposes adolescent sex with mature adults. I don't think that's cool. I wish they'd stop doing it.
Yeah, but
that's what I consider this.
And oppose them. And in a culture that maybe passed that as a law, there will be people like me that stand up and say it's an unjust law should be abolished.
Well,
but then there'll be people like you that say
I honestly don't know what the complaint is with that from a nihilistic perspective, though. Like, why
the complaint is that it's subjectively bad.
Subjectively
it's
bad,
subjective,
but that's not really bad.
What do you mean by really?
Like, subjective, you do not like that thing, and you're going to try to impose that morality on somebody else.
That's right.
But really, that's like ice cream. Like, I like chocolate ice cream, or you like vanilla ice cream. That's not, you should not be able to do it.
No, it's not at all. I mean, you can't motivate your opinion of vanilla ice cream on a rational or logical basis.
But you do know what the word subjective means.
Of course
I
do. So it is subjective in that sense, but you can't motivate an argument or formulate like a deductive algorithm on why vanilla ice cream is good. I can certainly do that with this claim.
But as a nihilist, you don't have a reason to. You already gave up syllogistic reasoning. You gave up.
Again, going back to the religious thing, you don't have a reason either. You just imagine one to condone your feelings because you feel very pious in your belief in God.
But you're the one being
inconsistent.
Is what I'm saying. You're the one being inconsistent.
I'm
saying what I'm saying is truthful. What I'm saying is right. You're being inconsistent with your worldview that says that pedophilia isn't objectively wrong, but you would oppose it.
Yeah.
But there's no reason to do that. Objectively.
What do you mean there's no reason?
For a nihilist to say you should not be able to be a pedophile.
We just got to make sure
there's no reason.
I don't.
That you don't
when you say there's no reason, there's a subjective reason. You just adhere to the subjective reason that you claim to be real, which I'm saying isn't true.
I'm saying that if your worldview is true, that it is just a matter of subjective morality preferences, then there'd be no reason that you.
Preferences, we do away with that word in that sense. It's not a preference. It's moral. It's what is and isn't moral. And by the way, guys, this is how societies work, okay? Everything is conditional and circumstantial. There could be a case, hypothetically, where someone should not have an abortion. It's a bad idea. They should not get one. But guess what? I would never proclaim that all abortions should not exist. You guys are the ones projecting your worldview on other people.
Yeah, I'm perfectly fine with that. Whether or not we project our worldview on people, that's consistent with our worldview. We're saying this is true.
You're saying that this is consistent. That's right.
But you're saying that you're a nihilist and that you are going to impose certain things on people like the pedophile.
Well, it's important.
But that is not consistent with nihilism.
It's important to point out first and foremost, you're playing identity politics. You're saying you're a nihilist, therefore you can't believe this. When I'm just engaging.
I'm not saying you can't believe it. I'm saying it's inconsistent.
I'm just engaging with you guys completely rhetorically, and I have been this whole time. But if you want to get into the weeds of nihilism, I've already said it millions of times.
That guy that you corrected so masterfully, you're a version of him. It's just like a calm, more argumentative and philosophical version. But it is sort of like I'm engaging with you and kind of like trying to do these tricks for no other reason than just to do it. I don't like what you're doing. I'm going to take it from time.
Well, sure.
That's basically what you're doing. You're no different from that other guy.
But you did treat him like what he did was wrong. You treated him like what he did was wrong.
What he did was wrong because his argument was full of fallacies.
Yeah, what's wrong with that from a nihilistic perspective? What does that matter?
It's contradictory. It's a poor argument.
Why does that matter from a nihilistic perspective?
It matters because we're human beings on a planet from which I can tell, and our beliefs and things affect the lives of other human beings. That's why it matters. And why does that matter? Because I say it does.
Okay, then you just get infinite regress then. Or you can say because I say it does. He says I don't care what you say. So why are you enforcing what you say on him?
I'm not enforcing anything. We were just having a conversation. Here's the thing.
Yeah, but you acted like the guy was being a jerk, and he was being a jerk. I did appreciate it. Actually, everyone on the comments was like, I love this guy, you. They really appreciated it, and the reason people appreciate that was when someone does something that's wrong in an argument, when they cast their opponent as being evil or something like that, and they shouldn't, I believe that they actually shouldn't. I don't know how that's consistent with nihilism for you to believe that they shouldn't.
Well, here's the thing. You view nihilism as this overarching thing. I believe in life, okay? I believe in children's laughter. I believe in love, okay? I just don't adhere to the idea that there are overriding moral truths. You do, I suspect. And I suspect you derive it from a God. Are those suspicions true?
Yeah.
So you derive your morality from a deity that you cannot demonstrate in any physical or mental.
I think that's what I'm trying to do right now. When I'm saying
you're failing,
my worldview is demonstrating that. So like the way that I'm behaving is consistent with what my worldview says. The way that you behave is inconsistent with what your worldview says.
No. My worldview. I've constructed my worldview. You've adopted yours.
construct it. So like you
Yeah.
there's an arbitrariness to that, right?
No. There's nothing arbitrary about it. So there is a consideration, we'll call it like a recreational consideration, and we'll even call it arbitrary, but those things must pass through a lens of logic deductibility first. Now that isn't like my overarching Socratic method. That's just, is this idea logically coherent? If it's
I thought we
logically
got to the
coherent,
end of that and you said it was because I said so.
well, yeah, that
Like,
is
I asked
because
you why,
I said so.
and I asked you why. And eventually it's just going to come back to you
Absolutely.
being the arbiter of
Absolutely.
truth, but it's not
That's
really
right.
truth. It's just
well,
opinions.
it's not. Well, okay. I don't believe in moral truths. So that right there is a that is not a connectiveness that we have. Because you keep appealing to this idea, that's not true, that's not true. Grass is green, that is true. The sky happens to be blue, that is true. It's wrong to kill someone? I don't think that's true. Is it wrong to murder someone? Yeah, I think so. I don't think that they deserve it. Why? Because that's what I think. And we can motivate that through any system you want. The worst system we could use is God, because that is entirely arbitrary.
But again, I think that it's coming back to the fact that you are the arbiter of truth in that worldview. And so when you say like, the grass is green, that's truth, that's true, or that's not true. Like, how do you even know that your perceptions are real?
I don't. How do you know you don't either? That's ontological.
I have a consistent reason for believing that my perceptions are true.
Why?
Like,
What is that?
God's perfectly honest. He's all powerful. He created me in such a way that I can know Him and I can know other people. So I'm operating consistently with my worldview. Your worldview says the opposite. It says you don't know whether or not your perceptions are real. You don't know whether or not logic is something you should adhere to. You don't know whether moral values are something that are objective, but you're acting like they are.
No,
So, like,
I'm not acting like anything. How am I acting like they are? By engaging
you're making
in
an assertion
argument?
right now. What is it based on?
My assertion is based upon my senses, and my ability to
and
comprehend.
you don't know that those are real, right?
Well, I have an ability to understand my senses in the way that they relate to the exterior world, so they are valid, at least in their ability to gauge my surroundings. Is that
How do
what
you
you
know
mean by
that
true?
they are gauging your surroundings properly?
Well, by their conclusions. For instance, I know that chair is dark, and if I walk to it, it's a little bit darker, I can kind of gauge its vicinity, and I touch it, I feel it. Now, that isn't to say it is true. You keep saying this word true as if we have an identical definition. I mean, tell me a profound truth, if you don't mind.
A profound truth
Yeah, something you would consider big and true.
that, well, Romans 1 is true, that we all know God and He made us, and what we're doing is suppressing the truth and unrighteousness when we deny Him. I think that's
wonderful.
a pretty profound truth.
That's a great one. Okay. So, is that as true as saying it is January 25th, I think? Are those identical truths?
Well, no, because I'd have to verify that, but
Right,
'cause I'm
right.
not sure at the moment.
Right, so there we go. You have to verify things that you hear and experience in regards to your own comprehension of reality.
Yeah.
Unless it's in the Bible. Then we just throw
I
that
don't
out
think
and just accept it.
anything is verifiable according to your worldview. Like when you say verify in your worldview, you're using very different tools then, because I'm saying my tools are valid because my worldview makes sense of those tools.
Well,
when
just
I
'cause
say
you're-
let me finish quick. When I say my senses are actually relaying correct information to me, not like a scientist poking me in the head and giving me a certain amount of some serum or something, and then I'm perceiving something, I'm saying they're real, they're actually there. And so when I make an argument, I'm trying to make it consistent with how things actually are. So when I say inconsistency, that's bad. You shouldn't be inconsistent. You shouldn't be a hypocrite. I'm saying things that are consistent with my worldview. When you say you shouldn't be inconsistent, like there is a moral value there, and there's also a value there of whether or not that's the way that we evaluate truth. When you say don't do that, I don't think you have a reason for it with your worldview.
Well, first of all, I would never give a logical or moral prescription. So that's just, I don't even know what
You
you're
did a
talking
second
about
ago
there.
with the pedophile thing. You said
No. I said I don't think that you guys should do this. I didn't say don't do this. You mustn't. So those are completely different things, and I understand that. Hold on.
You're used to the word wrong a second ago.
Hold on. Yeah. I do think it is morally wrong, subjectively. You understand that?
Yeah.
Okay. So how is that contradictory to what I just said?
Well, you didn't like my use of preferences, and I don't see how your subjective morality is any different than preferences. So,
Well, it's different from preferences in the sense that I verify, and the systems that I use to verify are related to my physical senses. Okay.
I don't think there's anything objective about those, is
Well,
there?
you can think that. Have fun thinking.
I'll ask you, is there anything objective about those systems?
That's a great question. So yeah, there are objective aspects to those systems. For instance, I objectively have a limited number of senses, and I must use them to verify objective facts.
Okay, and so when you say, a second ago I asked you about your senses being valid and whether or not you're living in a simulation. Or
Yeah,
something
that could be.
like
That could be. Yeah.
Okay. Providing that possibility, you can't really know to any degree of certainty whether or not you're living in that reality, right? Because
Yeah,
if you
that's
are
true,
living in
that's
that
true.
reality, there's no degrees of certainty. There's just
That's true. That's true. When I speak about objective facts, I mean things that we can demonstrate in whatever type of reality you would like to call this.
okay. So, provided that the simulation is something that could be legit in your worldview. I'm not. I don't.
It might be. Yeah. I don't think it sounds very implausible, but yeah, that could be the thing.
Well, plausible. Again, I don't think there's degrees of certainty or there's degrees at all
Of plausibility?
when you could be in that system. Like when you could be a solipsist or you could be living in your brain in a vat or something like that.
Yeah, I think it's unlikely, but yeah.
There's not degrees there. Like saying it's unlikely. You keep using these plausibility words. There's not degrees in that worldview. There's just, if I am that, I'm that. And there's no way that I can be more certain or less certain that exists.
Well, when things are implausible, we could say that, the likelihood of a manifested reality being the one that I'm viewing instead of a base reality. For instance, if simulations exist, there has to be an overriding reality or solipsist world in which this computer in the terminal exists. I find that to be more likely, but again, these terms of plausibility are entirely
likely. That you keep saying likely. Those are all based on observations you've made, but that's just assuming the system is what it is. You're assuming things about this reality that it's not the brain in the vat thing.
Other realities. Well, yeah, that's kind of how observation works. You have
right,
to
but
be,
it's
you have
observations
to be an
within the
entity to
possible
observe.
system. So, like, you could say, what is the test to say we are not living in a brain in the vat type of scenario?
There really is no test.
Okay, so when you say it's more likely or it's less likely, I would just say, no, there's no way you can test that, and there's no actual way that your observations feed into a likelihood or an unlikelihood of that being the case.
That's a sound argument.
So I would just say that that's totally subjective. You prefer certain things. You prefer raping children. I don't like that. And according to my observations and according to the logical systems that I'm subscribing to, I am very much against that. But all of those things that you're building on top of.
But sorry to interrupt you.
Sure, but all the things that you're building on top of, all the bricks that you're using to build the house that pedophilia is wrong, are not something you can objectively verify in any way. And I would say that's just because you are eliminating God from that picture.
Well, here's the thing. We completely agree. I just think that you're doing the same thing that I'm doing. And that you are providing the veneer of God over that. For instance, if in your book, when was the first time you read the Bible?
I don't know. I was a really late reader, so probably like 12.
Sure. Did you think you believed in God before or after you read the Bible? Probably before, maybe.
Yeah, before.
Okay. So you got halfway through, you got to that part about the Ten Commandments and everything, and that was good. And then you got to a part that condoned the rape of children. Hypothetically. Would you have accepted that?
Yeah.
Alright, well, hey man, that's logical.
But you know why though? Like,
because that's your worldview, it's consistent. But again,
if you had somebody who was perfectly honest,
because I'm the same
who knew
way.
everything, who communicated to you, it would be really dumb to go otherwise, right? Mm-hmm. That's what I'm saying I have. I'm saying it's a revelational epistemology, but apart from that, you have inconsistency, arbitrariness, and you can't justify the preconditions for intelligibility.
Yeah,
so you're acting like it's an intelligible world, but your worldview doesn't provide you with the foundation to say this is an intelligible world and we can make sense of it.
I'm okay with that, because here's the thing. I would rather appeal to my own sense of complete arbitrary, I don't know what you call it, nebulous moral prioritization over God said so any day. And as a matter of fact, if God is real and I die and go to heaven in that kind of sense, I would love for him to answer to me and for him to explain why it is that he thinks it is appropriate to kill the residents of Gomorrah, to flood the entire earth, to do any of a number of these reprehensible things. And I don't think any explanation can really prevent his, if he does exist, moral failings.
Okay. And moral failings are only significant
Subjective,
in a world wherein
yes.
God exists.
I think we've established that.
Yeah.
I think we've established that.
It's interesting to me that every complaint that you're going to make is always going to be inconsistent with your worldview, because making moral complaints or making logical complaints, you don't have to use the word complaint, but making
logic and rationality
not liking
are
certain
exterior
things.
to my worldview, though, just so you know. I mean, my worldview didn't motivate or create logic and rationality. Those are human creations that existed before my worldview.
I'm just saying the existence of any complaints in your worldview does not make sense. It's inconsistent. And so I would like to remind you of that every single time you make a complaint like that. Like, God, explain yourself, why you did this to Gomorrah, why you did this to Sodom, all those different things. Your worldview doesn't make sense of you having that complaint. And so why would God answer you the nihilist in a way that would like try to satisfy you. He'd rather just say, no, like I made you, I gave you knowledge of myself, and you acted your entire life like I didn't exist, and you spat in my face. So I'm not going to give you justifications for myself. I'm the judge. You have to justify yourself.
Okay, well, if I was put there, and I do understand your argument, Lindy, I would just say that I have to base my understanding off evidence and my comprehension of reality. I can't do much. Like, for instance, I see you're holding a tripod. If it was a little bit bigger, I might help you down with it. I have to use these observations to lead myself into conclusions, okay? And when I read the Bible, if I am to accept the righteousness of God, I have to have a little bit more than faith. I can't go off that.
I'm not saying I have only faith. I'm not a fideist. I would say that there is ample reasons that God has given me, and I've seen with my own observations, because God is good and He's made me a creature that can understand logic and can understand emotions and all the things that you value, and you were talking about a second ago. I don't think that those are bad values, like the laughter of a child or anything like that. I think the reason you appreciate it is because you're made in the image of God, and your nihilism doesn't make sense of your appreciation for that kind of thing.
That's great. I think I appreciate it because I am like the outcome of an evolutionary process that has made me a little more sympathetic to children. Because if their heads weren't so big and they don't look so cute, I might just think about cannibalizing them when, I don't know, the fire gets put out.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
And who would fault the nihilist in a nihilist universe who did that kind of thing?
Well, I would, because I think that child brings potential to the nihilistic universe. That might be the next Nietzsche right there. I don't want to do away with that great nihilistic enlightenment that might occur, right?
Who
right?
cares? Who cares?
Well, I'm a nihilist. I care about other
whether
nihilists,
Nietzsche
right?
comes around again or not, whether he's reincarnated into the body of a tiny child, I just care about what pleases me at this moment, and so I'm going to eat the child.
Well, that's
In a
irrational.
nihilistic-
That's irrational, because if you care about only what pleases you, that's not. You can't perpetuate that over the entirety of the society. It won't be stable.
I don't value, in this universe, I don't value rationality. I don't value objective things. I don't value the objectivity of non-contradiction.
Well, that's fine. I mean, it's a failing of my subjective morality, but your moral subjective, your subjective morality is a lot different. So I would disagree with that.
Preference. I would say that that's your vanilla ice cream versus my chocolate ice cream. You don't like eating kids. I like eating kids. That's
yeah, sure. Why not?
yeah.
I mean,
it gets down to that level,
I
and
don't
so
want to concede that because, and I'm not, but just like morality is different from a personal preference because it affects people's system. If I eat vanilla ice cream and masturbate every day, surely it might affect, I don't know, the wallet of my OnlyFans or my diet systemically, and that could affect, I don't know, some OBGYN that has to operate on me later. But generally, these things are not broad and effective. And I know what you'll say. You'll say, well, that's subjective. And I would say, yeah, absolutely.
Well, I am tempted to constantly remind you every single time you talk that you don't know anything to be true. And so, when you make assertions,
you indulge in that.
I do, yeah, I do that.
So
You're
let's
right.
be honest.
You're right. But when you make it a assertion, why not just say every single time you talk, I don't know that. Why am I saying this? Even when you make assertions about yourself, you say I believe this. How do you even know you believe that?
We could say that about everything. I mean, the only reason that you know anything, according to you, is because it says so in the Bible. So we're really at an impasse.
That's more than that. I would say that God's revealed Himself irrevocably through nature as well, and through He's made me in His image, and so I know Him. But I'm not being inconsistent, and there's a stopping point with me. But you're trying to be the one who's all-knowing, who's perfectly honest, and all that different stuff when you can't be. But that's the void you have to fill. It's either you know everything or you know somebody who knows everything. Because if you don't know everything, you could be wrong about everything you could be wrong about the things that you claim to know. So say...
Sure, that's absolutely true. That's just ontological. I find this to be a very weary and semantical discussion.
Again, I would say the reason that it's wearying is because the worldview you have doesn't give you a stopping point. It's a constant
I
ingress.
think it's weary because you have either inability or the lack of a desire to argue with the ontological truth that morality is subjective. Now you say it's objective. That's fine. We can move on and have conversations about other things. But in your mind, and correct me if I'm wrong, please. It is impossible to discuss matters of politics, philosophy, religion, because they all go back to whether or not morality and ethics are subjective or objective, right?
Not impossible. I will have conversations all day with people.
So why don't we?
Well,
instead of
I'll have
just
conversations
dwelling
with
on
people
it?
all day with that can actually justify the conversation. I don't understand having conversations with people who cannot justify the conversation, and they don't think it's real. It feels disingenuous to me.
Well, I think it's real.
Why have
I
a
just don't
conversation
know
about
it.
morality
Well,
or politics?
That's a mischaracterization of my view. I think it's real. I don't know it's real. That's
Okay.
the difference. I don't know.
But you don't even know whether you think it's real.
Well, neither do you. You don't know that God exists. You say that you do, but there's no way to know something like that.
Well, again, I'm testing your worldview by arbitrariness, consistency, and whether it justifies the preconditions of
Those are
intelligibility.
adjectives. You're testing my worldview by constantly referring back to the same argument we keep having, which is.
I'm happy to refer back to the same until you answer it.
You're not doing. I haven't answered it millions of times. It is subjective. It is consistent because they are all subjective, right? If I pull up a logical terminal, subjective equals true. Okay, they're not inconsistent. So, yeah, I think I'm done with this conversation. Is there anything else you'd like to add?
No. I would just say that I think you're being inconsistent with even that answer.
Is there anything else you'd like to add that you haven't said already?
Sure. Yeah.
There is?
Yeah. I would say that if you are right, if
I'm right about what?
the way the world is.
If I'm right about saying you're wrong?
If you're right about the way the world is, right?
Okay.
Then
which is what exactly? That morality is subjective?
It ends up not being provable at all. And so like
right. Now we're getting somewhere.
You say
understand now.
So you say like
Nothing
you can come to my atheist group and you can convince me to be an atheist or something like
You
that.
can convince me to be a Christian if you want to come to my atheist group. That's what I was saying. I was like, if you want to come over and try to convince me, by all means.
Okay.
Because I'm open, I'm ready to do this.
I just don't see how you can make sense of your activity on this college campus or anything else, because ultimately you don't have a reason for it. It's just a subjective one. It doesn't ultimately mean anything.
Yeah, I mean, according to your very malicious form of proof, evidence, and discernibility, that is true. Because here's the thing. You believe that things can be proven. I do not. You believe that things, because they can be proven, can be disproven. I don't believe that either. I think that we can make our best attempt at understanding our reality and use those methods that we got to garner that understanding to try to build things like, I don't know, universities and hospitals and the scientific method, and that they are never completely ascertainably proven true or false. Or do we see each other now?
No, I've always known that was your position, but you keep using words like likelihood or probability or all these different things. I don't think those words even have any real meaning in a nihilistic universe where you could be a brain of that right now. But you keep using it over and over again, and you don't like the fact that I'm reminding you that you're using it.
No, I don't like the fact that you're reminding me that I'm using it, because at the end of the day, it's irrelevant. I'm using these words to describe things in approximation to you so that we can facilitate a conversation, not argue over semantics.
Well, intelligibility, again, was what I was telling you. I was saying I don't think you can make any sense of an intelligible world. And so when I remind you of things that you're doing it like linguistically or whatever, I'm saying those things don't make sense. It's just a muddy mess. It doesn't make sense within your worldview.
I disagree. That makes sense.
You could say that's an arbitrary assertion, because we've already gone through the proofs why your worldview
Saying
cannot.
God is true is an arbitrary assertion. But here's the thing.
I'm not being
okay
inconsistent
I'm
or
okay
arbitrary, and I justify the
you are.
preconditions.
I'm okay with making arbitrary assertions. You're not.
Yeah, and I'm not making arbitrary assertions.
I think you
My
are.
worldview
You
is
believe in God.
I'm being consistent, and I'm not being arbitrary. I'm saying that you and I both appeal to the same standard of proof, which is you were made in the image of God, and I was made in the image of God, but you're denying it with your atheism.
Standard of proof?
Yeah, we both are appealing to logical laws. We're both appealing to our observations. We're both appealing to the same types of things, the same tools. I'm saying you don't have a justification for using the tools, and I do. And then you say, well, I don't like that you're making assertions about God. Well, fine, but the assertion about God is justified within this system, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, your assertion that God is justified in the system that God exists, which is a circular argument. And then my assertions exist on the premise that reality exists, which may not be true. I can't determine if reality exists. You're right, but I'm going to hedge my bets with that, other than this assertion of something that I can't test or even slightly observe. Do you understand?
Yeah, I think there's a difference between, so what I keep reminding you of, the vicious circle that you have with a lot of your worldview is a lot different.
It's entirely projected, by the way.
No.
That's your worldview. It is. Because
No, it's not viciously circle.
My worldview is predicated on something I can barely comprehend. Your worldview is basically predicated on something you can't understand at all.
Well, okay, so when I say, for instance, I appeal to God for my worldview, I appeal to God for objective morality, for laws of logic, for all these different things, I'm doing exactly what a creature is supposed to do with his creator. I'm appealing back to the ultimate authority. And when you appeal to all these other authorities that are not an ultimate authority, and you treat them like ultimate authorities, and I remind you that you don't have a justification for believing in them, it goes in a circle over and over again.
Have you ever heard the phrase, if a lion could speak English, we would not know what he would be saying?
No.
What that means is that if a lion could speak English, we wouldn't know what he was saying because his points of reference are so skewed. You're saying things like proven authority. The utmost authority that I consider in this world is my senses. Now, with that being said, I must curtail that authority with other stipulating authorities, okay? All of these authorities don't even come close to this concept of an objective deity. These authorities are just considerations that I use to make productive events in my life, to just make progress, and that progress is based upon, again, an assertion that I exist, a stipulation that reality exists, which, by the way, is arbitrary, presumptuous, and inferential. I don't know if it exists, but I'm hedging my bets that reality might exist, and I definitely would not put nearly as much faith as you put in your God into anything else.
But that's pure fideism right there. Right? That is actually you just choosing to believe something arbitrarily.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
But you were faulting us for saying, appealing to faith or something like that.
No, because you guys totally...
And we're not even doing that.
No, you are. You just claim that you're not because you have this consideration of a deity. You're making entirely arbitrary decisions. Mine are arbitrary, but not nearly as much as yours. They are inferential, presumptuous, and demonstrative, I would say. But regardless, even that slight amount of predication is way more than Christians have and any theist, right?
No.
Why not?
Well, I would say that, so, when I make an appeal to an ultimate authority, when I say that, like, you know God and I know God and I do, and all this, what I've been saying to you the whole time, and you say, well, I'm a nihilist, your appeals to these different authorities being less arbitrary are not less arbitrary. They're one.
Reality is not arbitrary.
Your appeals to your senses, your appeals to reasoning, your appeals to anything else.
How can you say a sense is arbitrary? Based upon what, respectively?
You could be living in a vat right now. You could be.
Okay, but if we were to
living in the
define
Matrix.
Arbitrary, the word arbitrary as an adjective cannot be used to describe an object. Is a bowl arbitrary? Is the world arbitrary? That doesn't make any sense. You could ask it, is the world the outcome of arbitrary systems or arbitrariness maybe, or existentialism, whatever, but
when I say an appeal to your senses is arbitrary, what I'm saying is...
Oh, I would agree with that, yeah. But that's not what you said. You said your senses are arbitrary. That's a completely different claim than what you just said.
I mean, if you could be a brain in a vat, then the existence of that lamppost right there is an arbitrary observation of using your senses. It could be there, it might not be there.
I understand. Yeah, I understand. That's true. And that's demonstrable. I mean, I could show you a mirror. I could put a blade of grass in the water. You can see it break. I mean, yeah, that's true.
Okay. So when I say the system that you're using to evaluate things, my reasoning, whatever it is, Russell's arguments, the guy that was here arguing, I don't know what his name was, the guy that you've dismantled in a really good way, I would say the way that you make observations and argue against them is making appeals to things that you cannot and will not justify. And I'm making appeals to those things and I can justify them. And you say I'm being arbitrary by appealing to a deity. That's not arbitrary, and it's not just assertion. It's much more than that. I'm saying these things that we're doing right now, the things that you've already done, is justified in this worldview, and it's not justified in that worldview.
I would agree with that. How can you determine the existence of the deity? Because that's pretty integral to the world.
By the impossibility of the contrary. The contrary of this view ends up being arbitrary, inconsistent, and it doesn't justify the preconditions of intelligibility, and so therefore it's true. It's a negative argument. It's not direct like what you might prefer, but I don't have to make a direct argument.
Right. But just like the brain in the vat situation, if I can't say things are implausible, you can't either. If I can't say things are irregular, you can't either. And if I can't say things that are impossible, you can't appeal to that same impossibility. Even if God tells you it's impossible, we're still in the same situation of solipsism. We are still in the same situation of being unable to determine things just by our senses. And those senses, by the way, are the same ways that you perceive God.
Okay, if that were true, if it was the case that my worldview is if I was going to be consistent with the idea that I could just be a brain in a vat or whatever, I'd walk away and I'd never have this conversation again with anybody because there's no reason to.
Oh, there is though. The reason is to improve ourselves, to engage honestly, to not
according
go
to what
away.
standard?
If I, like Sisyphus, push a rock up a mountain every day, I'm battling my own woes. I'm defeating depression. I am doing something objectively. There is meaning in life aside from what you get out of a deity. And there's a lot of meaning in life that can be created on your own, and it's pretty fun.
Okay, but what you just said, you giving an answer and me trying to evaluate it with reasoning or with my senses or whatever, using all these tools that I can't justify, I'm saying that since the worldview itself, it's impossible to live consistently with. It's impossible to not be arbitrary in it, and it doesn't justify the preconditions of intelligibility, where mine does. I'm saying this is a better system. This actually makes sense of the world, and so when I say things like you're a sinner, you need Christ, you need to repent, I'm doing that from a worldview that makes sense of those appeals and those assertions. Your worldview doesn't make sense of any assertions. Whether you believe something or not, whether you like something or not, it doesn't make any sense of those because you don't even know if you do. But you're being inconsistent with it. You're saying a certain level of probability or it's likely or all these different things. Again, you can't justify any of them, but you still make assertions as if you can. It doesn't make any sense. My arguing with you makes sense. Your arguing with me doesn't make any sense. And it's just because you like to do it, I would assume. But that's not a good reason to argue. I don't think that the guy who came up who was being a jerk to Russell and to you, I don't think that what he was doing was good. And I know that you recognized that it wasn't good. And so you corrected it. You don't think what Russell does in general is good, and so you try to correct it. But and you make appeals, you use logic, you use all these different things. I don't think that makes sense within your system at all.
Yeah, one clarification. I'm not trying to correct Russell's behavior. I'm just trying to come here and show him that opposition comes in many forms. Sometimes it's a little bit more rational, a little bit more simple than most people see.
Yeah.
Is there anything else you'd like to add?
No, I would say I do appreciate the way that you conducted yourself in that conversation.
Thank you.
I think
yeah,
it was admirable.
likewise. I think you guys are respectful in the sense that you know how to conduct yourselves in a conversation. So I appreciate that at the very least. And I think out of all the characteristics we share, that might be the chief among them.
Yeah.
Right.
No, I do want to say though, like everyone on that live stream was like, "Oh yeah, this guy is so much better than the other guy." So it was very much appreciated by a lot
Is that
of
going to be in a
people.
VOD or something?
It was just a live. It's over now.
On Twitch or something?
No, it's TikTok.
TikTok. Okay.
Yeah.
Wow, TikTok live. I'm a big guy on there. Okay.
Yeah.
All right, well, have a good day, fellas.
Yeah, you too.